Did you know that across America, there are fruits you legally can't plant in your backyard? We're not talking about exotic imports that won't survive your climate. These are fruits that could thrive in your garden, but are banned by federal law, state regulations, or local ordinances. From deadly toxins to agricultural sabotage fears, 20 common fruits have been declared illegal to grow, and the reasons why will shock you. Number 20, wild strawberries. Your great-grandmother probably knew exactly where to find the tiny wild strawberries that grew in meadows and along woodland edges. Berries so flavorful, they made store-bought strawberries taste like cardboard. But the 1950s suburban development boom eliminated most of their natural habitat. And today, many municipalities actually ban residents from cultivating wild strawberry patches because they're considered weedy ground cover that lowers property values. What breaks gardeners' hearts is that these thumbnail-sized berries are far more nutritious and flavorful than their giant cultivated cousins. But homeowner associations across suburbia have classified them as undesirable native plants that interfere with perfect lawn aesthetics. Children who once spent summer afternoons hunting for wild strawberries now face fines if their families try to establish patches in residential areas. The free fruit that delighted generations has become contraband in the name of suburban conformity. Number 19, ackee. Your Jamaican neighbor's ackee tree produced the most beautiful sight every summer, bright red pods that would split open like flowers to reveal glossy black seeds nestled in creamy yellow flesh. Caribbean families had been growing these West African natives in Florida backyards since the early 1900s, and the fruit was the star of traditional ackee and saltfish dishes that brought families together for Sunday dinners. The tree itself was gorgeous, with glossy green leaves and those stunning red pods that looked like nature's own jewelry boxes. But ackee contains one of the most dangerous toxins found in any fruit, hypoglycin, which causes Jamaican vomiting sickness that can progress from nausea to seizures, coma, and death within hours. The FDA banned ackee completely across all 50 states because the unripe fruit shows no visible signs of its deadly nature, and even experienced growers sometimes misjudge when it's safe to eat. Only properly processed canned ackee is allowed in the U.S., and growing the trees can result in federal charges and immediate plant destruction. Number 18, chokeberries. Chokeberries were thriving in American gardens until the 1960s, when their intensely astringent name and flavor led to several highly publicized cases of children getting sick from eating the raw berries. These native fruits are actually incredibly nutritious, packed with more antioxidants than blueberries, but their mouth-puckering taste when eaten fresh created a panic that led to bans in many suburban areas. What's tragic is that indigenous peoples and early settlers knew exactly how to use chokeberries, dried, cooked into jams, or mixed with other foods to balance the tartness. But after a few children were hospitalized from eating handfuls of raw berries, insurance companies began refusing to cover properties with chokeberry bushes, claiming they were attractive nuisances. Families who had been making chokeberry preserves for generations were forced to remove bushes that had been providing superior nutrition for decades. Number 17, miracle fruit. The miracle fruit was a small, unremarkable red berry about the size of a coffee bean, but it possessed one of the most extraordinary properties in the plant kingdom. When you ate just one berry, it would completely transform your taste buds for the next hour. Lemons would taste like sweet lemonade, vinegar like fruit juice, and even the sourest foods became deliciously sweet. West African tribes had used these berries for centuries, and a few American researchers in the 1970s were convinced they could revolutionize diets for diabetics and dieters. The FDA banned miracle fruit from commercial use and severely restricted cultivation because officials worried the taste-altering properties could be used to mask spoiled or contaminated food, making it impossible to detect dangerous products. There were also concerns that the fruit could interfere with medications or medical conditions by disguising important taste cues that warn of health problems. Today, obtaining miracle fruit plants or seeds requires navigating complex agricultural import restrictions that make cultivation nearly impossible for home gardeners. Number 16, Barbados cherry. The Barbados cherry looked like a perfect miniature version of a regular cherry with bright red skin and a sweet tart flavor that made it irresistible to children. These small trees were incredibly productive, often bearing fruit multiple times per year in warm climates, and the cherries packed an incredible nutritional punch, containing up to 65 times more vitamin C than oranges. Families in Texas and Arizona had been growing them successfully since the 1940s, using the abundant fruit for jams, jellies, and fresh eating that provided exceptional immune support. But agricultural authorities banned Barbados cherry cultivation in border regions because the fruit can harbor Mexican fruit flies, one of the most destructive agricultural pests in the world. The flies lay their eggs inside the developing cherries, making detection nearly impossible without cutting open every single fruit, and a single infested cherry could introduce this devastating pest to American agriculture. Violations result in hefty fines and mandatory destruction of all plants, with some growers facing criminal charges for threatening the multi-billion-dollar domestic fruit industry. Number 15, hawthorn berries. Hawthorn trees were once common in American hedgerows, producing small apple-like berries that were used for heart medicine and food preservation. But today, these native trees are banned near commercial apple and pear orchards because they can harbor fire blight, a bacterial disease that threatens commercial fruit production. In states like Washington and Michigan, it's illegal to plant hawthorns within miles of commercial orchards. The berries that had been used for centuries to treat heart conditions and make traditional preserves are now considered agricultural threats that must be eliminated. Agricultural inspectors have the authority to remove hawthorn trees from private property if they're deemed a risk to commercial operations, and property owners can be fined up to $10,000 for harboring disease reservoir trees. Families who had traditional hawthorn gathering spots have watched them bulldoze to protect corporate farming interests. Number 14, black currants. Black currants remain illegal to grow in many northern states due to federal bans that date back to the early 1900s, when they were identified as hosts for white pine blister rust. Your great-grandmother might have made black currant jam with berries that contained more vitamin C than oranges, but today you can face federal charges for growing them in states like New Hampshire, Maine, and parts of New York. What's particularly frustrating is that disease-resistant varieties have been developed, but the federal bureaucracy has been slow to lift restrictions that were put in place over a century ago. Families who try to grow black currants in prohibited areas can face visits from federal agricultural agents who have the authority to destroy the plants and impose fines up to $60,000. The intensely flavored berries that made the best cordials and medicinal syrups remain forbidden fruit for most Americans, even though they're perfectly legal and popular in Europe. Number 13, gooseberries. Like black currants, gooseberries remain illegal in many states due to white pine blister rust concerns. But the restrictions vary wildly from state to state, creating a confusing patchwork of laws that can turn innocent gardeners into criminals. In some areas, you can grow certain varieties, but not others, while neighboring states ban them entirely. Your grandmother probably made gooseberry pie from tart berries that were perfect for cooking, but today you need to research federal, state, and local laws before planting a single bush. Agricultural agents conduct surprise inspections and can order immediate destruction of illegal gooseberry plants, with fines ranging from $1,000 to $25,000 depending on the state. The confusion is so great that many nurseries simply refuse to sell gooseberries rather than risk legal liability, making these once common berries nearly impossible to obtain legally. Number 12. Calorie pear. The calorie pear was once the darling of American landscaping, producing clouds of beautiful white blossoms every spring and small brown fruits that seemed harmless enough. The USDA actually promoted these fast-growing trees as the perfect ornamental for American yards because they were resistant to disease, drought, and pollution while providing stunning seasonal color. Millions of these trees were planted across suburbia from the 1960s through the 1990s, and they seemed like the ideal low-maintenance landscape tree. But those innocent-looking small fruits became an ecological nightmare when birds spread the seeds far and wide, creating impenetrable thickets of thorny trees that crowd out native plants and damage infrastructure. States like Ohio, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina have now banned calorie pears entirely, with hefty fines for anyone caught planting them and requirements that existing trees be removed at the owner's expense. The same agricultural departments that once gave these trees away for free are now spending millions trying to eradicate them from the landscape. Number 11. Muscadine grapes. Muscadine grapes, native to the southeastern United States, face restrictions in many areas because their vigorous growth habit and bird-attracting berries make them nuisance plants in suburban settings. These incredibly hardy grapes can survive diseases that kill European varieties, but their wild appearance and spreading nature make them unwelcome in controlled landscapes. The thick-skinned grapes that made superior wine and jelly are now banned in many residential areas because they attract birds that homeowners consider pests. Property management companies actively remove wild grapevines, and some cities fine residents who allow them to grow on their property. The genetic resistance to diseases and pests that made muscadines valuable has been sacrificed to suburban aesthetics that value appearance over productivity. Number 10. Mirabelle plums. Mirabelle plums were small, golden treasures from France, about the size of large grapes, but packed with an incredibly sweet, honey-like flavor that made them among the world's most prized stone fruits. French families had been growing these delicate plums for centuries, and they were so valued that certain regions of France had protected designation status for their Mirabelle orchard. The trees were beautiful too, covered in white blossoms in spring and loaded with golden fruit in late summer that seemed to glow like tiny suns hanging from the branches. The USDA has classified Mirabelle plums as high-risk imports due to concerns about European fruit flies and other pests that could devastate American stone fruit production, making it nearly impossible to obtain trees or even seeds legally. The few attempts to grow them commercially in the United States have required extensive quarantine procedures and regular inspections that make cultivation economically unfeasible for most growers. While you might find Mirabelle preserves in gourmet stores at premium prices, the fresh fruit and the trees that produce them remain effectively banned from American gardens, keeping this European delicacy out of reach for American fruit lovers. Number 9. Wild cherries. Wild cherry trees are banned in many areas because their leaves and bark contain compounds that can release cyanide when wilted or damaged, making them potentially dangerous to livestock and children. These native trees produce small tart cherries that were once valued for jams and medicinal uses, but safety concerns have led to their classification as poisonous plants in many jurisdictions. Agricultural authorities require the removal of wild cherry trees from pastures and residential areas, claiming they pose unacceptable risks to public safety. The same trees that provided essential fruit and medicine for centuries are now treated as hazardous materials that must be professionally removed and disposed of. Property owners can face fines up to $5,000 for harboring wild cherry trees, and some states require special permits even to transport the wood after removal. Number 8. Rose hips. Rose hips from wild roses are increasingly restricted due to pesticide contamination concerns and liability issues related to the thorny canes that produce them. These vitamin C-rich fruits were once gathered by families who knew they were more nutritious than citrus, but modern environmental contamination has made wild rose hips potentially dangerous to consume. The same fruits that prevented scurvy and provided essential vitamins are now considered too risky to harvest due to roadside herbicide spraying and industrial pollution. Many areas ban the cultivation of wild roses entirely, classifying them as aggressive native plants that interfere with landscaping. The traditional knowledge of how to process rose hips into jellies and teas has been lost as the plants themselves become illegal to grow or gather from. Number 7. Service berries or June berries. Service berries were reclassified from food plants to ornamental shrubs during the suburban revolution, and today, many areas restrict their cultivation because their berries attract birds that homeowners consider pests. These native plants produce sweet, almond-flavored berries that were once a crucial food source, but they're now banned in many residential developments. The berries that provided essential nutrition in early summer are now considered messy fruits that lower property values and create maintenance problems. Homeowner associations actively prohibit service berries, and some cities require permits to plant them due to concerns about bird attraction and dropped fruit. The free food that sustained indigenous peoples and early settlers has been sacrificed to suburban aesthetics that prioritize appearance over nutrition. Number 6. Beach plums. Beach plums are effectively banned from cultivation in most coastal areas due to development restrictions and habitat protection laws that ironically prevent people from growing the very plants they're supposed to protect. These salt-tolerant native plums once provided free fruit for coastal families, but they're now so regulated that it's nearly impossible to legally cultivate them. The small, intensely flavored plums that made exceptional jelly are now protected as endangered native plants in some areas and banned as invasive natives in others, creating a legal maze that makes cultivation nearly impossible. Coastal development has eliminated most natural beach plum habitat, but environmental regulations prevent people from establishing new populations, effectively ensuring their continued decline. The fruits that sustained coastal communities for centuries exist now mainly in protected areas where harvesting is prohibited. Number 5. Himalayan blackberries. Himalayan blackberries produce some of the largest, most delicious berries you'll ever taste, but they're completely banned in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho because of their incredibly aggressive growth habit. These non-native blackberries can grow 20 feet in a single season and form impenetrable thickets that have literally swallowed entire properties in the Pacific Northwest. Property owners are legally required to remove Himalayan blackberries and can face fines up to $10,000. for allowing them to spread to neighboring properties. The berries themselves are superior to native varieties, but their success is their downfall. They're so productive and vigorous that they've become ecological disasters. Agricultural agents conduct aerial surveys to identify illegal blackberry patches and can order immediate removal at the property owner's expense. Number 4, prickly pear cactus. Prickly pear cactus fruits are banned in many western states because the plants can poison livestock and spread rapidly across rangeland. These drought-tolerant cacti produce sweet, nutritious fruits that sustain desert peoples for thousands of years, but they're now classified as noxious weeds that threaten the cattle industry. The ruby-red fruits that provided essential nutrition in harsh desert conditions are now targets for systematic elimination through herbicide campaigns funded by ranching interests. Property owners can be fined for allowing prickly pear to grow on their land, and some states offer bounties for their destruction. The free food that grew in the harshest conditions has become an enemy of modern agriculture that prioritizes cattle grazing over human nutrition. Number 3, sumac berries. Sumac berries that make a refreshing lemonade-like drink are banned or restricted in many areas due to confusion with poisonous sumac varieties. The staghorn sumac that produces edible berries is completely different from poisoned sumac, but authorities decided it was safer to ban all sumac rather than teach proper identification. Families who had been making sumac aid for generations were told that all sumac was potentially dangerous and should be avoided. The same berries that provided vitamin C and natural flavoring are now considered too risky for public consumption. Many municipalities require the removal of all sumac plants, making no distinction between edible and poisonous varieties. And property owners can face fines for harboring dangerous plants. Number 2, wild apples. Wild apple trees that grow from discarded seeds are banned in many agricultural areas because they can harbor pests and diseases that threaten commercial orchards. These feral trees often produce small, tart apples that are perfect for cooking and cider making, but they're classified as genetic contaminants that must be eliminated. Agricultural inspectors have the authority to remove wild apple trees from private property without compensation, claiming they pose risks to commercial fruit production. The same trees that provided free fruit and required no care are now considered threats to agricultural purity. Property owners can face fines up to $15,000 for harboring wild apple trees, and some states require professional removal and disposal of the wood. Number 1, heritage grape varieties. Many heritage grape varieties that were grown by your great-grandfather are now illegal to cultivate due to Prohibition-era restrictions that were never fully repealed. Certain wine grape varieties remain banned in various states, and some require special federal permits that can cost thousands of dollars and take years to obtain. The grapes that made the best wine and juice in family vineyards are now controlled substances that can result in federal charges if grown without proper licensing. Agricultural agents conduct surprise inspections of private vineyards and can seize illegal grape varieties, imposing fines up to $100,000 for unlicensed cultivation. What were once common backyard grapes have become federally regulated crops that most Americans can never legally grow, even though the alcohol they might produce is perfectly legal to purchase. These forbidden fruits remind us that gardening isn't just about what will grow. It's also about what should grow according to government bureaucrats and corporate interests. From insurance liability to agricultural protectionism, each ban tells a story of how America lost its food freedom. Hit that subscribe button and check out our next video about the vegetables that were banned in the 1950s. The war.